the research that I do for the rest of my career, what would you like me to focus on?
Because right now I'm working with youth, I would say youth who are impacted by cancer and or diabetes, because I see the impact it has on them, specifically diabetes in the classroom. And a lot of the youth who are diabetic that we serve, it's cycle. A lot of their parents have it, and it's something that has impacted my family. So it's something that I would love for you to find a cure for.
So what do you think it would take for more boys and girls to be interested in becoming scientists or researchers?
I think exposure, that is super important. Our kids don't know what they don't know. If their representation matters, if they see more of them, people who are that are scientists, I think that would be something that's great. And having hands-on experiences in the classroom, a lot of the schools that I work in, a lot of the students are just taught textbook. They don't have the application like in some of the suburban schools, and your social networks. So having opportunities to network, to have mentors, to have opportunities to come to the medical college and do a field trip and see someone like you as a scientist. Then I know young ladies, they were like, well, maybe one day I can do this. And to hear not just about the numbers and looking through the microscope, but your why. Because that for today, having a chance to sit down and break bread with you through conversation, your why connected to some of my whys. I was just in a school the other day with a young lady, and her grandmother died of cancer. We're raising money right now for Children's Hospital. And last year they raised over $5,000. And she said this project is important to her because maybe if she becomes a doctor, she could have saved her grandmother. So those stories to the why, I just think about why I wanted to be on stage. It was because of my grandmother. Why I wanted to work with youth was because of Miss Steele, my teacher in first grade. And had you been in my classroom, maybe I would have been a scientist, because it was because of your grandfather that you became a scientist, to look for the cure, not just be the doctor, but find the nuggets in the research that the doctor needs, or find the medicine to keep your grandfather alive. And so those story, being an African-American woman, story has always mattered to me, not just the numbers, but just the story behind, and how my grandmother used to walk to school and wring chickens' necks. And she, those times, that matters. If you get my heart, you'll get my head, because then I'm a nerd in that way. I'm like, so I'm gonna go research and look up, oh, what does it mean to be a scientist? What's the best school that I need to go to be a scientist? And so those things matter, and making it culturally relevant. Like I said, story. So for a lot of African Americans, storytelling is really important. So connecting the heart to it, because if you get our heart, you get our trust, which means you get our head. And so I connected with you right away. Like, I want to go and read about who was the first woman scientist. I'm hungry now, because now I'm going to go back in the schools and talk to my kids. This is an opportunity. This is something that you can do. So I think, again, exposure, as much as exposure, but also the heart, because you're brilliant. I already know that you're brilliant. But your heart is what connected me. Your heart is what made me excited about not being a scientist at 46, but exposing as many kids, as many young boys and girls as I know to the field of what it takes to be a scientist.
No, that's great. And yeah, I think the aspect of really, sometimes the sciences feel so cold to people, and really understanding that there is a very human component, not just working with other people, but really to what we do, and driving us to keep making advancements. We don't always get to see all the people that benefit from the work, but inside it makes you feel happy. Yeah.
And as I was sharing, like, it's the heart. And we don't get to see the heart of what you do. And I think that's a game changer. If we can see the heart of what you do and know that we can trust that you're not just having research to try to figure out, or because when it comes to health, there's like this mistrust of the doctors, there's mistrust of science. What are these numbers for? But if we can bridge and say, oh my goodness, you had a grandfather who died because of this. I had a grandmother who died because of this. And this is why you're trying to move science forward to find a cure. that's where we end up on the same page. No matter what our economic, where we come from, what we look like, we want our people to be safe and to have the resources they need to be to have a vibrant life. And that's where we connected.
Definitely.
When I say the phrase scientific process, what do you think of?
I think of a lot of time and work, and I think that the key word in that is process. So it's not necessarily always a straight line where we have this idea and then we just go do something, right? You have to be very careful, and a lot of planning goes into it, making sure we have, we're asking the right question that's going to have the biggest impact for the community or our patients, or maybe we're looking at a disease. The largest number of people that might be affected by some sort of disease, and so we need to frame the right question. Then we need to make sure we have the right tools to answer that question, and sometimes we have to develop those tools in order to reach the long game of answering the important question. So really, it's a long, time-consuming process, and I think one of the things maybe that sometimes people don't always appreciate is that a lot of the times when we're formulating this scientific process and we're going along trying to plan studies and understand our results and everything like that, a lot of the work is really in the context of what we already know. So like we have this sort of framework in our mind about like how things are, and a lot of times I think it's sort of natural for people to try to fit what they learn in the context of what's known, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes we need to just sort of shift things or change things quite dramatically, and I think sometimes the public doesn't always appreciate how sometimes we don't have all the answers right away, and I think it's a long-term process. Some of that I think was pretty evident with the COVID, the COVID pandemic, and how our understanding shifted over time.
Providing something or finding a cure can be a very long process. What keeps you motivated?
That's a great question. I think really both people and progress are the two things that really keep me motivated. It can be very long. It can feel sometimes defeating and as if you're sort of going down a dead-end road and you're wondering what to do next. But I've had a lot of life experiences that have sort of led me into being a scientist, and those really are important in keeping me motivated. My grandmother passed away from a really sudden and abrupt heart attack when she was 59. She was at work. And so I found that very frustrating, that we didn't quite know what to do. And it felt like she was kind of, taken from our family, and there wasn't really any warning or anything, right? So that was a big deal. And then when I was an undergrad, I worked as a nursing assistant on the east side of Milwaukee, and I worked in a unit where there were a lot of patients that were getting care for cancer, and they were maybe too ill to go home or do outpatient, so they were just staying in the hospital. And I saw the doctors really doing the best they could for these patients, and I saw the impact that it had on their families. Some people got better and some people didn't, and that was really motivating because I wanted to be on the side of things where we try to find advancements for the physicians. And so the people, like knowing that there are a lot of people out there that are living with diseases that don't quite have a really solid treatment for a cure, keeps me really motivated. And then the other aspect of people, this career, I get to train a lot of people and teach a lot of people, and so having this constant influx of students and trainees that are really just as excited as I am about science and wanting to reach and meet the same goals that I do, it's constant energy all the time, and it's really wonderful. And then in terms of progress, this is a field that's constantly changing, and right now more than ever, we have this ability to use all of these new tools. There's this beautiful interface of technology and advancement in computer science and all these things that we never had before. And so being part of that and being able to figure out how to use and incorporate those tools to make great leaps is really, it's really motivating, and it's a community both here, locally and across the world of researchers working on some of the same problems, and you get kind of swept up in all of that and constantly want to move forward. And maybe one of the best things is sometimes, you know, you're maybe alone, or you're reading something, and all of a sudden, like, all the puzzle pieces that you had suddenly come together. You see something under the microscope maybe nobody realized before, and it's very rewarding. So I think there's a reward component for the days where things go really great and you have great progress that you know, it makes you want more and you want to keep pushing.